Recording in progress. Okay. It's going to be a great time.
Oh boy.
Okay. Does that sound interesting and cool?
To go. Damn, I look so good.
Let's just wing it. You ready? 4 hours later.
Yeah. Dear Tech.
That made me tired.
Oh, laughing hurts. Cut.
Welcome back, everyone. And today we're asking, Dear Tech, what's up with interviews these days? Fran, what is up with interviews these days?
That is a grand old question. What's up with interviews these days? Me personally, I'm doing, well, how long has it been since I interviewed? It has been a little over a year and a half since I've interviewed. So my experiences and my perceptions may be a little bit different, but I was actually curious to talk to you about kind of like best and worst personal experiences you've had, at least from a tech recruiter perspective. For myself, I won't name names, but best interview experience I've had was structured, organized, clear communication from recruiters. Expectations were clear, timelines were clear, and I was able to, it wasn't just an evaluation of me and my skills and my competencies. I also was able to connect with the interviewers, ask questions, and it felt like it was like a dual conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The least enjoyable interview I've ever had.
Just say the worst. Why you got to sugarcoat it? The least enjoyable. I still enjoyed it.
Be nice.
Yeah.
The least enjoyable interview I've ever had was I had to apply. I had to take a assessment. I had to speak with someone. And then I had a phone screen. I had to speak with someone else. And then I had a multi-segmented interview. I'm not going to say anything else, otherwise people are not going to know what I'm talking about. But yeah, multi-segmented interview. That to me honestly just felt really rigid. I think from a beneficial perspective, it was clear and concise, and probably beneficial from a company perspective to evaluate my competency. But from my perspective, it just seemed kind of cold. My own personal interest in like how I view my job and my career, like I want a balance of I don't even know how to describe it. Like I want that balance of like connection, culture with my job. Like it's for me, it's not just the job. It's like the people you're with, it's the experiences you have. So yeah.
Did you get both offers?
I did.
You got both offers. Okay. See, so I mean, that's why she said
if
least.
My hair was down, I'd flip it right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did. But it's interesting. I think it's like to each their own. Like some people may love that experience, and it may work well for certain people and not others. So it's definitely subjective in a lot of ways. What about you? Experiences you've had interviewing, best and worst?
So my best is actually a role I didn't get, but it was still the best experience. Cool. It was at that time, it was like it was kind of a lateral step, but maybe a little bit for a company that was like significantly better than the company I was at. And it was similar. It was like relatively quick. Everything was like, they were like, this is what we're doing. They did it. The only thing that I didn't love was when I got the rejection call, like I didn't get any actual feedback, like any real, like they were like, oh, like you haven't worked in X type of a company before, and that's why. And I'm just like, that's kind of shitty. But besides that, everything was quick. I found out within, I think it was like 2 weeks. Like I applied, interview, second round, like phone screen, first round, second round, third round, which was like all in the same day, and
Mhm.
then it was really quick, which I loved. Worst, I think most people's worst are the same, right? Like when it's like really stretched out process. Um, I know exactly actually because initially I was like, I'm not sure which company I'm talking about because I've had a couple bad ones, but there's one
Mhm.
you talk to this person, then you got to talk to that person, then you got to talk to the hiring manager's grandma, and it's like, it's like a whole thing. It happens, and these, I remember I had a friend tell me like, oh, I need to talk to my hiring manager Skip, who is on maternity leave, something to that effect, and I have to wait a week to talk to this person before they make a decision. And I was like, your hiring manager Skip, so your boss's boss's boss,
Hmm.
and they can't make a decision without this person for an IC role. And one can say like maybe they need to, but like if we think objectively, and I know the role that I'm talking about, like you really
Mhm.
don't need to. You know what I mean? Like, come on, because they're not a small company either. It's not like, oh, we're a very tight knit group. No, they're like
Mhm.
huge. Anyway, so stuff like that. But um, I think from both of our sides, we just want, like you said, like structure. We want to know what we're going to expect, and regardless of that, like we would ideally want a relatively short process. We don't want to wait forever,
Yeah.
right? So,
On the flip side,
mhm.
this is always an interesting part, like from a recruiter perspective in the tech industry, obviously where we both work, past companies we worked at. On the flip side, it is, I think, an evolving and ongoing conversation about how effectively you can assess a candidate's alignment to the role and requirements of the role in such a short amount of time. It's kind of like I don't know if this analogy makes sense, but I feel it's like speed dating with interviewing. It's like if you're speaking to someone for 30 minutes or even an hour, and let's just say they're committing to a year at your company, like you're rolling the at the end of the day, you're kind of rolling the dice no matter what. Like how much can you actually like bet on in speaking with someone for an hour cap and have full confidence that they are going to like 100% align to the role. I think that's unrealistic. But so that from the company side, I think it is a conundrum how much time you put into interviews and assessing talent so you feel like you've done your due diligence to fully assess and make an educated decision that that person is going to be a good candidate for the role, a good hire.
I think especially in markets where it's a hiring manager's market or like a company's market, and it's
Yeah.
not a candidate driven market, companies take themselves a little too seriously. And I say that because, we're no longer, if using the dating analogy, there's a few things we can say, but the first one I'll say is like, you go on a few dates and then you decide to be in this relationship, and then you wait several years and you're like, I'm gonna marry this person. Our interview process isn't a precursor to a marriage. It's a precursor to we're gonna start dating, right? Because like jobs aren't, you're not gonna be here forever, right? We just have to
Mhm.
accept that's the market today. In that case, if all those things considered, as a person looking at someone who might be unemployed, as a company looking at someone who might be unemployed or whatever, you're gonna make me wait 2 months before I get a job, really? Like, is that fair? Right? And on the other side of things, it's like I don't think so for me personally, I think a sweet spot, especially in the tech market, I think if a company says the final round is a day, right?
Mhm.
It's a bit much, but I'll still take it. It's not horrible. When it's a lot when you're like, oh, it's 3 days. It's like, dude, I'm not taking 3 days off for one company's interview, right? But I think like a 4 or 5 hours is a good sweet spot, right? Where if you do like 3 rounds in, let's say, 45-minute segments, 3 rounds, that's about a little 3 hours with some breaks in between. I think
Mhm.
that's a good sweet spot, right? And you do a phone screen before and whatever. And in that case, on top of that, we get to do background checks. We get to do references if we want to. So there's a lot of ways to
Does
figure
anyone
out.
actually do references anymore?
I know some agencies, like I know agencies that do it.
Uh-huh.
And that's like a part of their, I don't know.
Yeah.
I had a hiring manager that was like to my recruiter, like, I want you to do a reference. And my recruiter responded with like, we don't do that, but if you want to, you can feel free.
I even remember back in like agency days, we collected them but didn't do anything with them. And then I don't think any of the last few companies I've worked at since then have done them.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think for me, it's like most people won't give a name unless they know it's going to be good things, right?
Oh yeah.
And so like it's not really valuable. But regardless, like coming back to the idea of when you're interviewing someone, we have all these other checkpoints. And also, do you like some people like, oh, I'm looking for the best candidate, or oh, this person is good, but someone better is out there. And it's like, yeah, someone's better is out there, but that's not the point, right? Like that's really not the point, because you want one, someone who's willing to come to your job. Maybe the best person's not willing to come to your company. You want two, someone that you can work with. So if you find someone that's a good candidate, a good person for this role, um, that's where you should put your energy into. So when it comes to, like you said, an hour, yeah, that's definitely not a lot. But if you get to spend like the recruiter screen, the hiring manager screen, and then you have a 3-hour interview and a background check, I think that's enough to start dating. And then yeah, if it doesn't work out, you can break up.
This analogy is gonna be hard for me to come up with.
Yeah.
Um, Follow-up question to that. The art of, especially if in like engineering skill sets, product management skill sets, so often, I think this is an evolving, I think we can talk about the power struggle in a little bit as supply and demand shifts in the market, but um in a lot of technical skill sets, a lot of companies have some sort of exercise test or assessment for candidates, whether it's take home or during the interview, prior to the interview. I think I've seen it. I think it was heavily that step was heavily utilized by companies. I think some have shifted away from it in more recent years. So two probing thoughts I have for you, then curious to hear your thoughts. So one, I personally think the incorporating some element of the interview process where candidates are able to show rather than tell is a positive, because I think I think about like ACTs and SAT tests and all like the standardized tests we took as kids growing up. Like that format is for one specific mind. Like some kids may not learn that way or work that way, or their brains may work definitely where it's not an accurate assessment of competency because it's not the way their brain works. So I like I like the idea of giving candidates the ability to show rather than tell. But at the same time, from a candidate perspective, I've heard a lot of people bring up points too, like if you're giving me like a case study as a product manager to like assess your like streaming app, and I'm it's like relevant to the work that you're doing, like are you paying me for my time? Like if I'm putting 2 hours or whatever into this assessment outside of the interview that I have to like take away from my job where I may be losing money, like are you paying me for the work that I'm doing, and or why am I doing this? So I've heard two different perspectives on take home assessments. What are your thoughts?
So I think it so when it comes to specifically for take home assessments, I think there's a line, right? Some companies will ask you for something ridiculous. And I've seen that before where like someone came to me and they were like, this is going to take me hours, not like a couple hours. It's going to take me hours. What, like there's, and he, I think at the time, like the salary we talked about, he's like, it's not even close to my target salary. Why would I waste my time? And he passed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think there's a line. I think a couple hours isn't the end of the world, especially if you give them a couple days to do it. Because 2 hours, that's probably where the line is. I think the ideal sweet spot is about an hour. Like that's max, right? When it comes to coding in general, I saw the reason I actually really like coding is nowadays more companies are becoming open to like a lot of organizations are like agnostic of language, which is good.
Mhm.
And then I saw like I was reading someone's experience where they were like, I bombed the first coding question, like it was garbage, but
Mhm.
then the next three I killed and I got the job. Right. So it's an opportunity to see how their thought process is. Cause a lot of times
Mhm.
people like, and especially in engineering and like IT roles, we ask you, or I say we, but the company will ask you a question, the interviewer will ask you a question, and if you can get the answer wrong, but your thought process makes sense to them, that's good, right? But so I think coding is definitely good. I think when it comes to like test cases and when it comes to stuff like that, where you're putting together basically strategies and things that company can use essentially, there's a line where I think 2 hours is the line, is max possible. I think an hour ish is about a sweet spot. Um,
About an hour and 10 minutes.
That yeah, like I mean, I just think it should
Just being
my
nice.
you should be able to get your point across. So now if you can do that if it takes you an hour to do that, or if it takes you 15 minutes to do that, if you can just do a good job in getting the point across, that's where it comes down to. Um, but yeah, there's definitely value. But again, there is overkill. And I think a lot of stuff we see from time to time is overkill.
Mhm.
Sometimes, there's companies out there that love to ask really ambiguous questions that it's like, and I wouldn't, doesn't even make sense to me because I'm not an
There was
engineer.
one, I swear to God, if I can remember the client, I won't say it. When I was at the agency days, there was a question that was like, uh, go tell me like how many blades of grass are outside. Or
Mhm.
it's just some like
How would you
literally
figure
some
that
like
out?
what?
Yeah. No,
I don't know.
my
Maybe it works
friend,
for some people.
no, like my friend, this wasn't even a technical role. My friend was going for a role at a company. And if I say the questions, people might guess who it is, but I'm not going to. Comment who you think it is. But so the question was like, we're opening an office in India and you have to throw a party for the opening day. How would you go about like throwing the party from the United States?
Huh.
And it was just, and I was just like, it has nothing to do, nothing close to what this person's job is, but they wanted to know your thought process. And
Yeah.
he wasn't of Indian origin, but he asked me, he's like, what would you have said? I was like, I'd call my cousin and tell my cousin to do it. Like that was literally going to be if they asked me that, that was my answer. But I just think some of the, or it's not even, but like these questions, I understand what the thought process was initially, where it was like, oh, we want some innovative people who can think outside the
Mhm.
box. But now
Yeah.
you're just being pretentious. Like now you're just being an ass because you're no longer like, some of these companies are no longer the coolest kids on the block, and it's not cute to ask these random questions because people don't even understand what they're doing. And then I read another person that said, I went through the interview and I found out that the hiring committee never saw my interview, like never got the packet. And so they didn't even know that they asked me these crazy questions. And I'm just rejected even before the hiring committee saw it. And I'm like, that's rough.
Mhm.
You go through like a couple hours of interviews and the hiring committee doesn't even see your results. Tough.
Mhm.
Very tough.
Yeah, I think so from all that you're saying, I think it's like I think at the end of the day, like the style of an interview is really up to the company, and then it's up to you as a candidate to like assess if that style aligns with you. And if it doesn't, cool, don't interview. Um, but I do think there's some like consistent um things that people get right and consistent things when I say people, companies, consistent things that companies get right and consistent things that they don't for sure. Um, I think I think clear communication and setting expectations is a big one. I know I've heard and experienced a lot of people um not wanting to share information with candidates and give them the answers to the test when they're coming into an interview.
Mhm.
But I think that's such like a backwards way of thinking and also not like a good experience for the candidate. But then again, that also comes down to power shift in roles and supply and demand in the market. So you had brought up a point before um where obviously in today's world, it's what's the date today? February 17th. February
2023.
17, 2023, we're like our industry is experiencing mass layoffs. Supply is through the roof and demand is significantly lower. So you hear a lot of managers or a lot of companies are now saying, okay, we have more room to be particular and demanding because we know supply is up. But what was it, a year or 2 years ago, tides were turned, hiring was at an insane rate across the tech industry, supply was lower, and that had shifted. How
Mhm.
do you think, what's your kind of perception on how supply and demand in our market shifts interview structure and how companies interview?
So that's so what I will one of the things I'll start with by saying is I don't think it should, because I really respect when it's like we have a process and that's our process. And I think a lot of companies adhere to that, but I think the difference is more so like, oh, like we finished interviewing someone, let's keep this candidate, keep this candidate warm, but we're going to look for someone else. I think that's more prevalent in this situation. Whereas earlier, it's like, oh, this person has like one third of the qualifications, hire them because we need someone to fill this seat. But now it's more so like, okay, like let's see what else. But again, I think, and maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but I think a lot of hiring managers these days are a lot more empathetic than they used to be. At least I've experienced that on my end when I look at like the managers I support or
Why do you
work
think that
with.
is?
I think people have just upped their EQ a little bit. Like I think there's just more value in being empathetic. Yeah. Um, so maybe I'm just in this like tunnel vision. It's very possible. Like I'm just seeing good things, but I think in general, like people are trying a little bit harder to have that empathy, because the other thing is, because this market's so crazy, a lot of these hiring managers know that there's a chance that they might be in the market looking later, so they want to put the good karma out there. Like I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but I see a little bit more of that.
Yeah, for sure. I think those
So
are really good points. I think, like, obviously, like you said, I think in an ideal world, the shift in market isn't going to alter a company's interview process. Well, I will say, I think I'm sure we'll all learn more as we continue on in our careers and time moves on and figure out how to better interview and create a better experience for all parties involved. So I think like the evolution of interview structures are important, but being dictated by supply and demand, I don't think is obviously the right way to think about how you interview. Um, in terms of um, interviewing structure, what are your thoughts on structure versus go with the flow? On that spectrum,
um
where do you think interviewing should land?
I think I think structure is probably the most important thing. I don't think there's room to go with the flow, because as soon as you start quote unquote going with the flow, it becomes an unfair process, because person X had to go through 4 rounds. Person B had a good vibe, so we gave them 2 rounds and hired for person B. Or we gave him 2 rounds but then he bombed both of them, and we went person A. But then person A bombed 2 rounds, but they killed 2 rounds, so this person missed. You know what I mean? So I
Mm-hmm.
think you got to be objective. You got to you have to have a structure. There's no room for anything. But again, that's the issue. Is what I'll say is, let's say 2080. You should have a structure. But if your, final round is always with the skip, in this case, the skip is out, you have to figure out something else.
Define what you mean by skip, just to make sure everyone can.
Sorry, yes. A skip level is the hiring manager's boss, or your manager's manager. So let's say that person needs to interview at the final stage of every interview. That person's the person, and they're out on paternity leave, maternity leave, they're out sick, whatever. Uh, I I really dislike when we make a candidate wait for a random round of like, oh, we have to talk to one more person. They're out till next week. You have to wait. It's just disrespectful to their time. And we want to respect everyone's time, right? Especially because we just have to understand, like, even though the market, regardless of the market, good or bad, they have other opportunities, but also we just don't want to be those people. Like, it's just not cool, right? So then, and that's why I think it's very important to have a standardized process, and you should be able to at any point replace interviewer 2 with interviewer 5, interviewer 4. You should be able to do that, and you should have a plethora of people to call on. A lot of teams, depending on how small the company is, they're like, oh no, it has to be people from our team. I think that's a little archaic. Because again, if you're looking at, some people like, are they a culture fit? I personally don't like that term. It's about culture add, it's about growth. So having your team having to interview someone, you do want them to meet. I do think they should meet. I'm not against that. I'm not like it should be totally blind or random. But I think it shouldn't be that rigid. So structure, but intelligent structure, right?
Mhm.
But so with that, when I'm talking about structure, let me ask you a question in terms of process, right? What would you say is a sweet spot for? So I'll give you two scenarios. So first one is from submission of application to placement, right? So time to
Mhm.
fill, or not time to fill, but submission to placement. Or and then how long do you think the interview process should be up until decision? Like after
Hmm.
like they decided to interview the person. So those two things.
That is a grand old question. Okay, I'll start with interview process timeline. I think my answer is going to vary a little bit depending on the exact skill set and level of the role, I would say. But I think in an ideal world,
Mid
if
level. Let's
we're
mid level.
okay, mid level product manager from start to finish, let's say we're talking screen with sourcer, hiring manager screen, 4-person interview loop that's scheduled same day. I would say an offer out. In an ideal world, I'd say a month. Realistically, with everyone getting scheduled.
This is from when they applied.
Yep.
So they applied, recruiter looked at the resume, made the phone call. So that's
Mhm.
timer, a month.
I would say
Okay.
that's an ideal world, but I would also say, like, knowing what I've experienced and I've seen, like, there's so many factors that derail that timeline on multiple parties. Like, one, there could be 1,000 applicants on one role, and there's one sourcer with 20 other recs having to
Mhm.
review all those applicants. So it's going to take that person time. Then the next step, hiring manager has to review. Then they have to schedule something. The candidates and hiring managers' schedules are not always going to align. Like, they're going to have conflicts. So that's going to take some time. Then final loop, there's more people involved, more calendars that have to get aligned. So, like, there's so many factors, obviously, that go into deterring that timeline. Um, it's hard, at least from the recruiting side and getting everything scheduled.
Yeah, but I think from submission to offer out being a month, I think that's great, right? If you
Yeah.
think about it. And I was looking at another thing. There's a poll online, and it said they asked like what percentage of the roles you apply for do you get a callback or an interview, and it was like less than 25%. Someone was like, I'd be
Mm.
happy if I got to 10%, right?
Yeah.
And I think that just comes down. But so there was another point that was made a little bit underneath was, and something I do want to touch on is one, quality of resume, and two, when are you applying? Because I think the
Mhm.
biggest factors outside of like figuring like the recruiter figuring out if they can get you into an interview is what does your resume look like, right? And is it intuitive and is it nice? And I was actually having a conversation with someone else about that yesterday. And then the other one is when are you applying? And I think it's pretty safe to say, not always, but if you're not applying the week the role comes out, you're probably not going to be seen by anyone. And I would even go as far,
Especially
depending
in
on the
today's
role.
market.
Yeah, I'd say the first, and if it's a remote role, if you need to do it, not even the first day, you have to do it in the first like 3 hours, right?
That's
Um,
crazy. You'll see, like, job postings on there, and within a day, there's 5,000 applicants. Like,
well,
it's
that's
it's
that's why you need to
crazy.
do Google alerts, LinkedIn alerts.
Yep.
Like if you're really out there, and I think we talked about this earlier, but it's a full time job. You have to be on
Mhm.
it. But I think those two things are the biggest thing that when it comes to whether or not you're going to get a call. But also, um, let me ask you, rather than me saying what I was thinking, I'll ask you. We talk a lot about apply for the role even if you're not um, suitable for it, right? And it's a nice
You
thing to
don't hit
say,
every single point.
but as a recruiter, right? What are your thoughts on that? And I understand. Okay, let's say not even 7 out of 10. Let's say you only hit like 3 or 4 out of 10 bullet points.
Mhm.
Set expectations for me.
Yeah, so multiple thoughts that I have on that point, and like my own personal opinion probably vary a little bit, but thoughts that I have when you ask that. One, why the fuck not? Go for it. Literally
Sure.
not going to hurt anyone. You might as well shoot your shot. If it doesn't stick, like no harm, no foul. But then obviously if that's the approach you're taking, the volume of applications you're going to be putting in is probably a much higher volume. And then it's like, how customized are you? Um, how much of a customized resume or application are you submitting if that's the approach you're taking and it's a much higher volume of applications? Um, what was your original question?
No, I'm,
Go
ju- I'm
off
just saying,
into
just
this.
no, just set expectations because I think like um, I agree with you, but I also think like don't expect to get that many interviews, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
kind of shitty
Yeah.
to
But
think of
then
it that way,
it's
but it's
like,
true.
it's on the other side of it. Yeah. It's like, how much time are you taking to update your resume, make sure, like, let's say you're applying to program management and project management roles. Like, are there variations in your resume? Are you customizing based on projects that you've worked on in the industry that you're applying to? Um, so I definitely think it really depends on what approach you want to take. Like, you could get lucky with throwing mud at the wall approach, but in my personal opinion, I think being more um specific and mindful and focused in terms of how you apply how your resume looks, um and how you go about getting to that initial step, there's a lot more likelihood of a return there.
Yeah, and I think you have to network. Like, and the way that I want to put it is, and I don't want, and I'm like, I hope I don't offend anyone or anything, but if I'm a recruiter and I have someone that's hitting 7 out of 10 or even 10 out of 10, and you have 4 out of 10, what reason do I have to send you to the hiring manager for review? Right? I'm like, that's not me doing a good job because there's people that are better qualified.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're out there, if you're out there networking with, and I'm not saying don't not networking with the recruiter. I mean, with the recruiter is fine and that's great. But if you're in the industry and you're because you're pivoting or you're trying to jump or whatever, and you meet these people and you learn like what they're working on, and then you do some side projects or whatever the case is, then they will want to interview on their own, right? They will send you the recruiter, be like, I'm going to interview this person. I met them. They seem really
Mm-hmm.
cool. That's what you would need to do to get those roles that are out of your reach. Because if you're just applying and that's it, you're not going to get as like, it's going to be like maybe less than a percentage that
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get interviews for.
Yeah,
Um,
I would add to that real quick. I think I agree with you, and I think at the end of the day, like, if that's what you want, like, apply. Like, don't not apply because
yeah.
someone told you to or you're worried, but yet you don't hit all the marks. Like, it's never going to be a detriment to you for applying. But I think if we're just talking about today's market, if I mean, this is slightly pessimistic, but I think it's also reality. I think if you have like less than 50% of the qualifications, you're likely not going to get seen unless you have a connection into the role. And I'll say that one, it's not necessarily always the right thing or an equitable experience, but networking is how people get contacts and intros to places that you wouldn't necessarily if you're one of 2,000 applicants. Because I think the one reason that could benefit you if you have less than 50% of the requirements is, are you given the opportunity to speak with someone or communicate with someone past the recruiter where you can articulate how your skill set aligns and will benefit the company, because whoever's looking at that resume, whether it be the recruiter, the sourcer, a hiring manager, they're making a judgment based off that one piece of paper. They're not going to be able to talk to you. Like, they're making judgments based on what you put on your resume. And obviously, as much as we all like want that process to be as fair as equitable as possible, we're humans. Everyone has biases. So people are going to make judgments based on experience and what they know to be true, which may leave out someone who could have been a great candidate, but they have less than 50% of the qualifications. They don't align with the requirements of the role based on that one piece of paper that the recruiter or hiring manager is looking at.
Yeah, but I don't see really an ethical issue with, because I feel like when you network, right? I think it's still fair because I think you're doing extra work, right? It's not like the issue becomes when it's something to the effect of like nepotism, where it's like, oh, this is my uncle who's gonna give me a job and whatever. But when you're going out there and you're like working and you're showing your value and because they're not just like, oh, you're a nice person. You're having to talk about these skills. You're talking about what you're doing and what you're looking to do. And then they see the potential, and this is someone that my company can invest in and someone can value my company. So it's like you're doing an extra round of interviewing almost, kind of. So I think it's a part of the process one way or another. I think it's a part of the process. Um,
I will say that I definitely don't think networking is a bad thing. I think in my mind, I'm thinking of the element of, we're talking about like referrals for roles, and we're looking at a team or an interview panel that lacks, let's say, gender and racial diversity. The statistics of them referring people who look like them and talk like them are very high. So then it's like, okay, what level of um, fairness or equity is there in that process if we're just looking at referrals?
yeah, I mean, but then my other thing would be like, I don't know if it's a thing that you can't refer someone onto your own team, but I think I've heard of that for some other companies where you
Yeah.
can't refer people for your own team. It has to be for a parallel or
Yeah.
some
I
other.
know that companies have that with like the hiring manager, and anyone on the interview panel can't
Yeah.
refer.
And
Or
I think,
can't not necessarily can't refer, they can't be on the interview panel for
yeah,
someone they refer.
I think that's a great way to make sure it's still fair. And I think that's a great way to keep it different. Because if you have, let's say, like a bunch of similar people, but teams, hopefully in companies, teams are different. Maybe they're a little homogenous in their own pockets, but maybe they're different. So that's a good way to mix it up. Again, I think everything has to be done with a little bit of common sense. I think that's a great way to think about it. Um, but yeah, I think common sense. I like common sense.
Cool.
um, Okay, so this is a little bit outside of the realm of interviewing, but I think it's a part of the process, and I think I know for a fact people care and are passionate about this. Having to put in your resume, like upload your resume,
Oh,
and then
Jesus.
type in type in all your information. I'm
Mhm.
gonna I'm gonna say this. What the fuck is that about?
Mm.
I think unanimously everyone hates it,
Yep.
and I feel like even companies that do it, people in their company hate it, but it's still out there.
It's
Why?
I think there's like a gap for all the ATS systems out there. Like, listen up. There's a gap in the tools, because I'll say from like a recruiting perspective, I go straight to the resume. Like,
Yeah.
I don't look at any, straight up. Like, all the information that you put in the application that is all on your resume, there's no point in looking at both. Like, you're having to input that information twice. So like, I'll just go straight to the resume and everything I need to know is there. But I think companies utilize it obviously for like data keeping, tracking purposes. And then there's also companies out there who obviously have automated systems that review and filter profiles in that initial stage based on what they enter. So I think those are those are reasons why it's probably occurring. Two of the reasons, not that they're right, but yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
If you're spending money on a system that's going to be like pulling data straight from the resume, you can spend a little bit more money and make it so that it can transition that data into your, like, from the resume into the system rather than,
Mhm.
because look, I know in the past I've literally started my application and saw that I had to do that and turned it off. And I
Yep.
think a lot of people have done that. And so what you're doing is, and no offense to anyone, and I say that a lot because I just want to make sure I don't offend people, but now what you're actually doing is you're actually hurting your candidate pool, because the people that are really good might not be inclined to retype in their data because they have other options. So now you're getting people that are a little bit more desperate, maybe. Nothing wrong with that. They could be just as good as employees, but I'm saying from a perspective, if you're trying to be objective, you want 100% of the people that want the job to apply to the job. That's what you want as an employer, because you want the ability to pick anyone that you can get, right? And we talked about other things like perks and benefits, which is a whole other topic. But when it comes to this, why are you filtering people out, right? So I think from that perspective, but you're right. Even with AI, I remember I did work at a company that had an AI that was going to tell you what percentage. It was never right. First of all, it was
Mhm.
never right what percentage like fit the candidate was, and we just ignored it and we went to the resume. There's never gonna, well, not there's never gonna be a time, but usually we're gonna, for the foreseeable future, until Chat GPT takes our jobs,
Mm.
we're gonna. I joke about it, but I'm kind of worried. But I'm gonna check the resume. So that's all you ATS companies, everybody. We're not gonna name names, but you know who you are. Fix it.
Do you feel the same about cover letters?
I think cover letters are, so again, I think sometimes companies take themselves too seriously, and some companies like require cover letters, which I don't get. But if you're
Mm.
pivoting, you should have a cover letter. If you're pivoting, and if you are, um, this is
Mhm.
your first job, depending on the role, you should have a cover letter. Um,
Mm.
because I think that you need to, if especially if you're pivoting, one, you should be networking, but either way, you should have something that's not just this is what I've done, which is what your resume is, but this is how this relates to what you were asking me to do. And
Mhm.
that's what that cover letter is going to tell. Because again, we talked about, if you're only checking 4 out of 10 boxes, but if
Mhm.
your cover letter is compelling and telling me why you actually check all 10 boxes, but it's not one for one, I still think you need to network. There's a lot of extra work to be done, because even reading an extra cover letter as a recruiter, I really don't want to, because I shouldn't have to. Like, ideally, the resume should tell the story, but it doesn't sometimes. And we respect that and we understand that. And that's why we talk to candidates. Like, if I see a candidate that has 50% of this stuff, I'll have a phone call with them, because there's a story there. Right. Um,
Hi,
so yeah,
Cody.
I think, oh yeah, that's my dog. He wants to go out. But we'll go out in a bit. He will guest star in more episodes. But yeah, so I know you don't like cover letters, Fran, and I get it.
Yeah, I
But
get
I think it's
your
necessary.
logic totally makes sense though. And then it also made me think of, I was like, future state. I think we need there was over the last couple years, I think there was a pretty hefty shift journey. I don't know the word I'm looking for. There was a migration of,
Nice word.
that was the word, thank you. Migration of people coming from education, like teachers, into tech in the last few years. So I'd be
Okay.
interested to talk to someone who had that journey and how they pivoted.
Mm,
'Cause it's not like I just, those two titles at the top of my head, I'm like, those are like pretty different
hmm.
in terms of function and day-to-day activity, but obviously there's a lot of like competencies within both that align,
Sure.
um that have paid off for a lot of people. But I digress.
No, I've
Um
seen that between recruiting, and so I've seen there's a
mhm,
big company out there that they have this program or something to get recruiters to become PMs,
mm,
program managers. And then I know a few people that have done that too.
mhm,
But because the thing is, like, what do recruiters do? They handle clients. They, set up processes. They do a lot of these different, things, stakeholder management, that
mhm,
PMs have to do, and just little tweaks. So I've seen them, and they have cover letters explaining all that stuff. Again, I don't think you can just submit that and hope for the best. I think you have to have conversations and stuff like that. But besides that, if you're like, you're a 7-year engineer and they're looking for a 7-year engineer, you don't need a cover letter. And companies, you don't need to ask for a cover letter because it's in the resume.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
um, oh, let's I have one real, we have some more time. COVID ending, or not ending, but the COVID protocols ending for a lot of companies and in-person interviews. What do you think?
I have similar thoughts as to return to office, but specific to interviews with moving back in person, I'm torn. So, one, I think it's a really cool experience for candidates to go into an office, go into a campus, and meet and speak with people face to face. I think you get to assess a lot more of like the culture when it's a face-to-face interaction. Um, and if a company has a mandate for you to be in office, you get to see what it looks like, see what your drive or commute into the office would look like. I think there are a lot of benefits to in person, but then at the same time, just as I had the same thoughts with return to office mandates, I think if we're talking about, let's say, an individual who has a disability and it's a lot easier for them to work from home. Um, my concern is the lack of equity with requiring individuals to come into an office for an interview and or work.
I get that. So now my thought is, at least when it comes to interview, how do you ensure an equitable process
It's
if some
consistent.
people are coming in and some people aren't?
Mhm.
But even before that, I would say, and it goes for return to work too, but we're not going into that right now. But when it comes to interview, make it worth them coming into the office. If you're going to do the same stuff that they were going to do on a Zoom call, like, there's no point. There's no
Mhm.
value, right? Make it cool. And there were companies back in the day that would make interviews. Like, I had friends that came back from interviews and like, that was so cool. Like, I
Mhm.
did a bunch of random shit.
Got to eat some free lunch, like got a
Yeah.
really cool tour, saw the ping pong tables.
Got some merch sometimes, depending on the company, right? Like, so
Yeah.
there's many different things you could do. Actually, so when the first question you asked about the best interview that I've ever had, they gave me a little gift card. They're like, hey, listen, it's not in person, so we're not going to be doing lunch, but usually we take you out for lunch. Here is an Uber Eats gift card for like 50
Sounds like a
bucks.
bribe.
Probably is, but you know what? I appreciated it because I like, because the thing is, a lot of companies would take you out for lunch, right? They'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
let's go to lunch, right, as a team or whatever, depending
Mhm.
on the company. So I think, what is your interview process? Is it, I don't want to say cool because I don't want to make it seem like you have to make it gimmicky. That's not what it is. You have to show value for them coming in. Make it really interesting. Like, are you giving them an actual tour, right? If you're really bringing them into a room, talking to, 8 people and then they're leaving, that's pretty shitty. But if you're giving them a tour and you're showing them, oh, this and that, and this is
Mhm.
what's cool, that's where it's at, right? And then when it comes to what you're saying, I 100% agree. I don't think, and I think there's another thing. Even before we talk about the final round interviews, I've heard conversations of like, oh, recruiters should be doing face to face conversations in the office. Ain't nobody got
Mhm.
time for that. I'm gonna say this for me right now. Quote me. It is disrespectful to a candidate's time to do that. And look, if they're currently not employed, they'd be willing. It's fine, but then there's also an equity issue because if I have a job, I'm not coming in. I'm not going to take off for work for 1 hour face to face with a recruiter. No offense to recruiters. Heck, I am a recruiter. That's not the point. But the point is, if I have a job, I'm not doing that. I'll do a phone call. We'll figure that out. Lunch break, fine. Now, if someone's willing to come into the office because they're not currently employed, and this other candidate has a job so they can't come in the office, that also messes with the whole equity piece, right?
Mhm.
So there needs to, again, structure, being standardized, and taking into account what makes sense for everyone.
Mhm.
Um, I do think there's value face to face. That's definitely something that is for sure. And then again, You have to figure out a way to make it equitable for someone who can't come in because they have a disability. I totally think that that's for sure. But again, that's why you can't just go with the flow, because you have to think of these inequities that come in. And again, you can't be too rigid, because you can't be like, nope, they have to come in. I don't care if whatever situations they have. So it's a balancing act. But I think, again, have conversations like, how are you determining your process? Are you talking to candidates? Are you sending a survey at the end of interviews? I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't think that it's very useful if you do it after you give them the result, because if they didn't get the job, they're probably not going to. So you should probably do it right after, before giving the result. But how many surveys are you giving out for the interview process? And you tell them that it's anonymous, and every person interviewing is doing it, so we'll never know it's from you. So it won't affect. So if you curse us out, we're not going to reject you for it. But you gotta collect data, and it can't just be, oh, you got the job, tell us what you think about the interview process, because they're not going to shit on the interview that got them the job. But we need to know. I mean, I think everybody needs to ask more questions.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah.
Well, anything else you wanted to cover on this one?
What do you? Okay, so let's recap real quick.
Yeah.
So concise, structured, manage expectations beforehand, let them know what they're in for. Communication.
Consistent.
Timely feedback. I think that we didn't touch too much on it, but I think that's something that, like, some companies will just it both ways. Candidates goes to, but some recruiters goes to. I've heard of it, right? I may have done it before in the past, once or twice. If I'm being honest, it happens. Actually, that's not true. After a final, it's very unlikely that I've ever ghosted someone after a final interview. That's shady. But either way,
I would venture to assume for you, and like me myself, like I would never be like a malintent of not reaching back out to someone to give them an update.
You forget, and then it's been too long, so you don't say anything. But I really don't. I feel like after a final, I'm very keen, because I want to get them in there. So I'm very keen on trying to get them. But I don't know. It's been a while. But I think timely feedback, and adaptation, adapting to the people out there. But if we forgot something, please let us know, because there's a good chance we did forget some stuff. But maybe we do a part 2 of this in like 6 months and see what that interview landscape looks like based on the difference in the market.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll change.
Yeah, I mean, just based on what happened in the last 6 months, it has to almost change.
Oy. Well, thank you all so much for listening. Comment, subscribe, and we will see you all next episode.
Sincerely, Fran and Shubho.